Hey, it's Kyle here, and as you see, I'm joined by a special friend today, and that's because the book I am reviewing is Rubicon, The Last Years of the Roman Republic by Tom Holland. So I had to invite my Roman friend here to sit in on the book review because I thought he might enjoy it since he'd be familiar with the subject matter. If you couldn't guess by the title of this book, this is a nonfiction history book. I'm a huge history buff, so I read history and nonfiction books all the time. Typically, I'll rotate between reading fiction, nonfiction, just to keep things fresh and everything. I actually just finished reading this book about a month ago, and let me say two things about it real quick. First, it was probably, I'd probably rate it now in my top 5 favorite nonfiction history books of all time. I absolutely love it. And I'll also say this is probably the best book I've read in the past year, fiction or nonfiction, both categories. It's been the best I've read this past year. I absolutely loved it. One reason I enjoyed it so much is the style that Tom Holland wrote it in. He writes it in, it doesn't read like other history books. And I feel like there's a quote on the front cover that sums it up really good. Let me read it quick. Stunning. Holland keeps his narrative moving at a chariot race speed. I really like that chariot race speed part because this book it feels like you're in a chariot race. The events that he's describing just comes at you rapid fire style, just one after another, and it reads really quickly. A lot of times nonfiction books can kind of read a little slow since there's not a real story going along. Whereas, fiction books, a lot of times people say, no, well, I couldn't put the book down, so I read it in a day or 2 days. Usually history books don't read like that. But this one, I believe, is an exception to the rule. He writes at such a rapid-fire pace, that really chariot race top speed, that it reads very quickly. It's one of those things you're just reading it, and you're like, well, I can't put this down because I really want to find out, more about this thing he's talking about now. And then he transitions to the next one before you know it. And you just keep on reading and reading. So it reads a lot quicker than your typical nonfiction books. I think a lot of people who typically don't like nonfiction books might enjoy this one because of the style that's written in. At the same time, I will say, though, there's a couple times I thought this style was a little bit of a drawback. The couple times I'd say what the problem was, at least I felt, in my opinion, was the problem. We are reading about some important event or some important historical figure, and then all at once he transitions to the next event he's talking about, and you don't really feel like he'd finished talking about the other one. It's like, wait, did I miss a paragraph there? Did he finish discussing about that and I just missed it? And you go back and he just made the transition so quickly that I think a couple of times he just did it a little too quickly. He rushed himself a little bit. But I said over the majority of the book, I think he does it excellent. There's just a couple of times I thought he did a little bit of a bad job with it, but I'd say like 95% of the time he's doing a great job with that fast-paced style. Now that I've finished kind of talking about the style of the book, I think I kind of give you a brief overview of what the book's covering. As I'm sure as you guessed from the book title, this book is covering the period of history where the Roman Republic transforms into the Roman Empire. So it's covering the time, history before Julius Caesar, the life of Julius Caesar, and the little bit immediate time after Julius Caesar's death. So it's covering really a fascinating period of history where really, like they talk in the book, before this, all through the Western world, especially in Italy and Greece, you had all these states who were really were true democratic or republic states. And then when the fall of the Roman Republic into the empire, then you transition into a period of Western history where democracies ceased to exist and it became monarchies and empires and stuff. So it covers a very important stage in Western civilization. So one, it's very important. Two, the figures covered in this book are just epic. As they talk about in this book, even like a century after these events, people look back at this time period and just are in awe of the giants of history that were living in this period. You have figures like Julius Caesar, Augustus, Mark Antony, Cleopatra, Spartacus, Brutus, Virgil, Cicero, just huge figure after huge figure after huge figure. Just giants among men, So it's all these extremely important people just crammed in this one set of events transpiring. So I think that makes the book even more fascinating. I'll also say he does a good job of running this book in a style that if you don't like history, you don't know much about the history of the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire, you really won't be lost when you read the book. He does a good job of kind of explaining to you to catch you up to speed. He's basically assuming you don't know a lot about the history, so you're not going to be lost if you read the book. At the same time, he goes into enough details that if you are a real history buff, you'll find some more fascinating tidbits and facts, and the way he writes is just great. I believe, like I said, if you're a history buff, you'll love it. If you're not a history buff, you never really like history books, I think this might be the history book that gets you to love history books. So I strongly encourage you to go to your local bookstore and get Rubicon, The Last Years of the Roman Republic by Tom Holland. I hope you enjoyed this review. This is the first history book I've reviewed, so it'll be a little different. And also I thought I'd give a little challenge to the WeReadBook viewers out there. I've had this, my friend, for a while now. He's been one of my roommates for a good bit of time now, but I've never named him. I've always thought he felt like he needed a good name. So if anybody else there has a good suggestion for a name for my friend here, I'd really appreciate it. And just leave it in the comments, and maybe in the next video or review I'll announce the winning name. So keep those comments coming with suggestions of name, and like I said, be sure to read Rubicon, The Last Years of the Roman Republic. Hope you enjoyed it.